Today I have my mom with me, and she will be answering questions that you guys have asked. A couple of weeks ago, I did a post asking what questions you would have for her as a veteran homeschooler of more than 5 kids, several of whom graduated college, all of whom who are now homeschooling their own children. So if that's of interest to you, stick around. Hey, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today. So if you are new to my channel, I am a young homeschooling mom of 3 kids, and today I have my mom with me who homeschooled me. So you get to hear all of her advice and wisdom. These are actually questions that you guys have put to us, and I'm interested to hear what she has to say because I'm not sure what her answers will be to all of these. But if you guys want her to come on and do this again, if this is interesting to you, or if you have questions that you guys want to hear from her and you didn't get a chance to ask those before, comment anything below and I'll drag her back on here and make her answer more questions. But to jump right in, I did give her these in advance, so she's had a little bit of time to think about them, but she's also not normally on the camera with me, so I get to just put her on the spot. So, question 1. What is your biggest piece of advice or encouragement for homeschool moms?
I would say, well, just as a background, when I first started homeschooling, I was a C average in school. I had done very few things that were consistent in my life, and I was very insecure about being able to do this and what kind of material I could use and all that kind of stuff. But, by God's grace, we raised the children, and they all are very thankful for their homeschooling. And I respect and love each one of them, their families. And so I think really what I would say is that each person's unique, and not everybody needs to homeschool the same way, and not everybody will homeschool the same way. And I would just encourage people not to compare themselves with what other people are doing out there.
You mean my way isn't the only right way?
No, and in fact, I see many ways where we prioritize things. Our priorities are similar. But there's many ways we did it very differently. And that's the way it should be, because we're very different people. But I know the pressure that we sometimes feel. I led a homeschool group for many years, and I remember seeing people whose kids were just, had everything, or they were just, learning everything. Their moms had time for them, and I didn't with 7 children. And I just realized now that I should not have been comparing myself quite as much as I did in the beginning. I think I would just say chill, just to know that you are unique and that God made you unique, and that you have a special way to teach your children that's not like anyone else. And just eventually God will show you where that niche is.
I appreciate that. I didn't know you were C average.
Yeah.
That's impressive, actually. Not impressive, actually, but it does make it more impressive because I feel like you gave us all a very good education.
Yes. And And I don't know that I was C in everything, but I was not an A student by any means at all.
And anything but gymnastics?
Sports, right? Yes. Yeah, sports was something I enjoyed.
Okay, so why did you start homeschooling then?
Well, to be honest with you, it was my husband. In fact, when he first said he wanted to homeschool, I thought, what? What's that? And I was afraid to do it because I thought it would be inconsistent, and I didn't want to pull my daughter in and out of school all the time. So it was really one of the very first consistent things I did. And what I did is I put her in a year earlier, just to make sure that I wasn't going to be doing that. And of course I was sold by the time it was done. But I think we both I came to realize, he knew right off the bat, that God gave us the children. He didn't give the children to a school or to the state or to somebody else to teach or raise or teach them their values or whatever. He gave them to us to bear that responsibility. And so we really did take that on.
I think that's one of the reasons I've been homeschooling the kids is I realized that I want to be the parent and I want to be the one who raises them.
Right.
And the one who gets to not shape them entirely, but when you're with them that much of the day, you do. And that I do think it's my responsibility if I'm going to have kids to be the one to do the work and the ones who are guiding them.
Right. That makes sense. God gave them to us, right? So,
yeah, and I accepted that. It wasn't like it was kicking and screaming. We wanted kids.
Right.
So my job isn't then to hand them off to somebody else, but to do it myself.
Right. And to dare to shelter them. I know, because that sounds like a dirty word to some people.
Sheltering?
But really, we dare to shelter. We don't leave our kids out in the rain on a stormy night, by themselves without a raincoat. We're responsible for that. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So along with that, what priorities did you have when you started them? And what could you change, or would you change if you go back? Would you change how you did it? Would you change your priorities? That's a big question.
Yeah. I would say that we did not do, it wasn't home at school. It was school at home. So there's a lot more that went into homeschooling than just education. And that, I would say that priorities were honoring God and building a relationship with God, honoring Dad and building our lives around Dad, working as a family unit in everything that we did. And priority, I think, was character building and relationships with each other and with God. Really.
Well, you guys did that well, because I feel like all of us have really good relationships with each other.
With your spouses.
And with our spouses, our marriages are good, and we all are following God, and that's what we want for our kids. So, you achieved those main 3 goals, honestly.
Yes. And sometimes I think that gets lost in the shuffle, especially when we're trying so hard to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
But just keeping that priority.
So would you change any of that?
Would I change anything?
Or your priorities, not anything. I'm sure there are things you would, little things, but is there any big major things that you feel like, oh, I wish I hadn't focused on that, or?
I thought about that question, and I really don't think I would change a lot. I wish I had more time. I wish I had a little help. I wouldn't mind if I had somebody that came over and helped or something like that.
A side tutor?
Yeah, side tutor, more time. More time to spend with the Lord, right? But I would say, really, I don't think I would really change a whole lot.
You feel like the priorities you chose were the ones that matter the most now still?
Yes, I would say so.
Which is good, because not everybody can say that. So well done.
It was by God's grace, right?
Yep.
By God's grace.
Okay, so the next question you guys wanted to know is, what does she wish she had that I have for homeschooling?
Well, I would say that there are just so many materials out there that...
Yeah, you started in the beginning.
When I first started...
It wasn't popular yet.
Well, I didn't know another homeschooler at all. It was just my husband who wanted to do it. And when I started, I had no textbooks or anything, didn't even know they were out there. So I was writing all my, making my lines by hand, writing each page for number 1 and drawing
You're more committed than a lot of us.
Yeah, so that's where I started. So I would say just seeing you and all the material you have, there's just so many wonderful things out there.
No wonder you were afraid of being inconsistent if you had to make all your own stuff.
No,
that would make it harder.
It's true, yes. I didn't know where to start. I didn't have training. We didn't have any of that. We saw that all being built up later
by the
on.
end.
Yeah, so you have wonderful things. I love some of the things you do. At the same time, I can see where that would be really overwhelming for somebody just starting.
Oh my goodness.
Because I didn't have all that to wade through.
You just had a few to pick from.
Yeah, and I could see where that would make somebody insecure or not know where to start, or just, on top of mothering and trying to get it going, just trying to lead through all that. Could be am I not right?
It is. Even having been homeschooled and having an idea of what I wanted, when I thought about, in the next 3 years we're going to start homeschooling, I felt like I needed to start it a year or 2 before we started homeschooling so that I could think about what I wanted to use, because there is so much to decide. There's unlimited curriculum, and to pick one was almost like a deer in headlights feeling. Right. Even though I felt like I knew somewhat where my end goals were, I still had to sort through all of that. Yes. And it creates another problem, I think, for us, and that's what's super common online is homeschool FOMO. Which is fear of missing out. Because there's so much bright and shiny and new that somebody else has this cool new thing, and I do this all the time. I'm like, oh, what's that? I need to see that. And so along with the picking and choosing is I have something that's working, but that looks really good. Right. And we do that. I do that so much.
Yes.
And I have to rein myself in and be like, is that actually useful, or is it just cool? Yes, I do a lot of bookmarks and tabs on the computer so that I don't impulsive, that's cool, I want to buy it. I save it so that next year when I'm looking at homeschool curriculum, I can look at it and go, is that actually useful or is it just cool?
And also it costs quite a bit for
all
these different programs and things like that. I didn't quite have that as much.
Yeah, I think probably I would say I have a larger budget than you had, and that might be something also that would have been useful with, especially as many kids as you had.
Yes, and I can address that as I think some of these questions go into, because I did not have a large budget. In fact, I had a little purse I kept. You know about the purse yet?
Maybe
vaguely. I hid it in my underwear drawer. It was this little purse with a little zipper, pink and black, and if ever I got any money from somewhere that was just mine, I tucked it in there, cash.
Yeah, because we were pretty strapped financially in the beginning.
We didn't have extracurricular money spent on school. I didn't buy, I didn't have art supplies or music or any money for that. Mm-hmm. And so I just tucked it in there, and then whenever I really felt like there was something we needed, I went to that purse. Or, if God opened a door for one child who had, and that is something and I don't know if I'm out of order. Her question was.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
If you skip.
So I would identify their gifts and talents as they went along. And if I noticed that one of my child had an aptitude for something, maybe a gift in sewing because they just laid out a pattern, on paper or something, I would look for someone. I would just keep my eyes open for somebody who I could ask to maybe teach them. That didn't cost. But if it did, maybe I would go into that little purse. I didn't give everybody music lessons, and
no, we did not have the same.
No, but I did eye out their, their strengths and their talents.
And I don't think any of us
watched to find. I
don't think any of us were resentful of the fact that we didn't all have equal, like that one person had sewing lessons and one person had violin lessons,
right?
Because. Well, I do think we realized that wasn't my interest anyway. I wasn't going to play violin. So why just the fact that we didn't all, and we knew we had a budget and that didn't bother any of us either. Like that didn't hurt us to not have to all do the same extras.
But like even, the Prismacolors, right? The simple Prismacolor coloring.
Which we love those pencils.
I got those from my little purse. I decided to get those. And you guys, I still have them.
You still have the original kit?
We have them all.
Well, we only used them, like they weren't like.
Yeah.
Only for nice coloring.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah, your kids use those now.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah,
did you tell those? Your mom used
I let them use it.
I love those set of Prismacolors. And to this day, I love Prismacolors.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're actually the best pencils out there, but I have something in me that those are nice pencils, and probably because they were nice pencils growing up, which is funny. Okay, so what are some of the biggest changes that you have seen in homeschool through the years? So we kind of had two questions that were same, and I'll just put them together. You can answer. So what were the biggest changes you've seen in homeschooling through the years? And then somebody else asked, what are the things you've seen change for good or bad in homeschooling? And I don't know how much you've been in the current homeschool community other than your kids.
Right.
Do you feel like you've seen a lot of the external homeschool community
currently? Well, I would say, what do you mean by that?
Well, like, there's like, what do I mean? There's a lot of people are homeschooling now, especially after like COVID and people withdrew kids. And I feel like the homeschool community has changed a lot.
Yes.
From what it was when you were to now. And I guess people want to know, what are the shifts that you've seen in the homeschooling community since you were beginning?
Well, I actually will start by just saying I've seen a shift in the world. And the reason I say that is that I didn't know when we started homeschooling that there was a huge people all over the United States who also felt convicted at the same time and didn't know that other people were convicted. And I didn't realize till later on that it was a move of God. I believe it was a move of God to raise up godly children. Not that you can't raise up godly children going to a public school or a private school, but I see it as a move of God. And I came to that decision because one of my daughters went overseas to do mission work. And the area she went was new to homeschooling, if just barely. They were baby into it. And at this point, I had raised you all, and you had grown, and there was a whole homeschool movement in the United States by this time. And we actually were called on, my husband and I, just like out of the blue, to lead a homeschool conference for this country. And we had a whole weekend where we just taught on it. And I realized through that homeschool, I saw these women's eyes opening, and I saw them realizing that this was a good thing. And I watched that, and I watched this area now. They homeschool there, but it was a move of God that was coming upon their country as well. And so I mention that just because that is a shift I've seen. I've seen from no homeschooling pretty much all the way through to seeing it, flare in the United States and then seeing it overseas. Mm-hmm. I just see it as a move of God. But I would say the biggest shift is the technical side of it. I didn't have to deal with cell phones and internet. And yes, I couldn't look up any curriculum I wanted. I couldn't just punch a button and buy, math curriculum and have it here in 3 days. Yeah, no YouTube, right? Yeah. But at the same time, I'm very thankful I didn't have to deal with that, just because of the complications with the technical side. Yeah. So I would say that's one of the biggest shifts I've seen.
Is the reliance on the internet, and even there's a lot of online teaching and tutoring.
Yeah, and that can be good.
Which there is especially if you have like a work from home parent or somebody who can't be current. But yes, there is. There's
a challenge I didn't have, and so I don't really have advice for that, and just helping children to navigate through the technical side. You'd probably be the one to give me more.
Oh, we haven't gotten there yet. I feel like we've pretty much kept our homeschool without electronics for the most part. There's one of them does digital piano lessons, they're pre-recorded lessons, and then some audiobooks. But we've deliberately kept technology to a minimum in the homeschool just because I don't think they need that early, and I feel like I can teach. If at a point I need to, I would. But I hadn't thought about the technology being an influence on the homeschool community, because I feel like there's been a big shift on Facebook and on YouTube. There's influencers for homeschooling, not just homeschool moms, but people who are now creating a following to influence people, whether or not, I don't know. It's just, there's differences. There's people you watch who are like, oh yeah, you're homeschooling and you're sharing your journey. And then there's people you watch who are like, you're influencing and this is your job to influence people. And I think that without the technology, that wouldn't have been as widespread, and we wouldn't feel pressured by some of these other influencers to meet the perfect looking homeschool room, right? When you have somebody on YouTube who looks spotless and perfect and their room is sparkly clean and then your room is a mess, right? There's a lot of pressure. And I don't know if I really I don't know if I thought through that's because of technology and that being a shift versus it just happening in and of itself. Right. How much of that has been actually influenced by having technology.
And I also think just the difficulty of trying to help a child not to get into problems with technology and how to, regulate that. That would be a very difficult thing, especially as they get older.
Yeah, we'll have to address that as we get there. Thankfully we haven't yet, but we have thought about it. We've talked about it. Yeah. It's not something we're unaware that we will have to deal with the issues that come with being online. Yes. But thankfully, not quite. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that was the first kind of questions on the differences, similarities, how do you start? And then these ones are, I think, more specific strategies or how you did things. At least that's kind of how I saw the question. So the first one is, how did you homeschool each group level and differentiate between preschool, elementary, middle school, high school? Did you group people together? Did you do them separate? How did you kind of decide when to start your kids homeschooling, that kind of thing? Okay.
Well, I think I was maybe in somewhat ways like a one-room schoolhouse. And we were a one-room schoolhouse, really.
Yeah, living room, the floor, the couch, the table.
And this is where, I spent the summer finding the books I wanted to use, because after a couple of years, it opened up and there were not as many, but homeschool,
but you know, the materials.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your send away magazines. Yeah. Anyway, so I chose the different subjects that I wanted to do in each category, math and English and things like that. But I used hardbacks. I didn't get workbooks. We didn't have a lot of money. And so a child, just went through this grade. I'm sorry to tell you, it was very different than the way you do it, which I love the way you do it. But the child went through this grade, and then the next child went through that grade.
Yeah, we all had
notebooks. Used the same book.
We weren't allowed to write in any books.
Right.
Because you had to recite. And that was partly budget.
If we did a test or we did it, any homework or whatever, it all got written on a piece of binder paper, and I used that again. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't fishing for a bunch of different things each year or whatever.
Once you found
that really
one.
Wasn't, well, it's not that it's wrong to fish for those things. It's just I had 7 kids.
And you had a small budget,
and I had to make it work. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I chose to do it. And by the way, you guys came out okay. And that's what I say. It's, in the long run, it doesn't matter what curriculum you used or when they learned to read. there's a lot more at stake than just education, school-wise. And there are some things that are even more important than that. And so,
what's interesting is
that's the way we did it.
I have had somebody ask or comment that because they're on a budget, it's really hard to feel like they can meet. Like there's a big push to meet every kid's learning style where they're at.
Yes.
And I think I had somebody comment that that's hard with, I have a budget, I can't buy new curriculum for each kid. And I've mentioned that growing up, I think I remember maybe once or twice that you shifted to a different curriculum for a specific kid.
Yes.
But most of it, we all use the same books. And we all had different kids.
Very, very
and
different.
We taught this. So you can use the same curriculum for different kids learning differently and still be okay.
Right. And some of you are artistic and some of you you're all intelligent. All the kids that decide to go to college graduate at the top of their class. So it didn't hurt you to do that. I didn't know it at the time. I was insecure about it. I thought they were getting an inferior education. But I look back and I realized they did just fine. They did just fine. And that's why in the beginning I started with, everybody's different. Everybody has different needs that they need to do homeschool, and there's a lot more at stake that makes a person.
But I would say you were very consistent.
Yes,
and you were committed to that being your job. It wasn't a side thing or a hobby.
It was a priority to do. It wasn't our focus for the whole day, and it didn't take up our whole day. And I actually tried to make it not take up the whole day. But
if we were
at the same
industrious,
time, I was consistent. It was important.
It was a priority.
I wanted you to get an education, and you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So somebody asked specifically, they said their main struggle is how to entertain two busy toddlers while doing school with older kids. And that I've seen, that's a common thing.
Right.
I've seen people being like, what do I do with this kid?
Okay, well, first of all, I taught the children to learn on their own. And that was, so I spent the summer finding curriculum that was the least planning for me, and that's a little different than you.
Okay.
The least planning, the least prep, and then they had to do their work on their own. So I taught them to read, and that is probably the most challenging, reading and writing. But then they learned to learn at their own. Now, at the time, I had people who were doing all sorts of things, and I felt, like I said, really inferior. Like I wasn't, it's what I could do, but I felt like I could have done so much more, and I could have.
However, I don't think you do bad. I will say, before you move on, that skill of learning on my own is probably one of the biggest things I'm grateful for at homeschooling.
Interesting.
And I've heard more of my siblings say that skill has actually taken them very far.
Interesting, because my older daughter, your older sister, when she went to college, she called me once from college. We were talking, and she's all, Mom, I don't understand these kids when they study. They don't know how to study on their own. Yeah. And she said, we always did on our own. So, we
come to you if there was problems, or you check us and you made sure we weren't getting behind. But
right. So, and I realized then that it wasn't so terrible. They learned to learn. It wasn't,
and not just school, but like jobs. That has taken me. I can jump into a job I don't know,
right?
And learn, and I have.
That. Yes.
And that skill I recognize comes from that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I did have my older daughter. I had the school call me to do an interview with me because your older sister, because she did so well in school, she graduated at the top of her class, so they called me to do an interview. And they thought, they were going to hear all this stuff.
The university
all this creative stuff and all this time I'd spent teaching her. And they were so disappointed with my answers.
That's really funny. That was the university. I didn't know they called you.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. I knew they graduated high, but I don't know if maybe I heard that. It just didn't stick. That's funny. Right. They were... Yeah. Did they publish your answers? No, probably not. They're like, I don't know.
They did. You'll have to ask her. But I realized then that I had actually given her a gift. Yeah. I'd actually given her the gift of being able to learn what she wanted to learn on her own.
So one of the ways you managed toddlers was teaching us to be independent so that you could be present for other kids as well.
Yes. And I think the reason is that we had a theory in our house that it's not what's best for you, it's what's best for the family. It's not what's best for that child. It wasn't what's best for you and life revolves around you. It's what's best for the family. And that includes mom. Mm-hmm. So that includes mom. Mom's a person and she has feelings. So it's also as important what's best for mom as what's best for you and for the family at large. And so we because we had that theory, that's the way our family functioned, and it was just expected. Just everybody knew.
We all worked together. Yeah, and we were all expected to play our part.
Right. So you guys didn't feel bad that I had you learning on your own. It was just the way our family did it.
Yeah, and it was fine. And in fact, for those of us, I know some of us were more speedy at our homeschool than that. And for those, I remember I could get my homeschool done quickly if I was really motivated and industrious. And doing it on my own actually benefited that part.
Right.
Because I could be done and move on and still have done what I wanted to, whereas some of my siblings took a little bit longer.
Right.
And I remember being like, man, I'm done and you're still sitting there, which is one of the benefits of independent learning, is that kids can learn at their own pace more than if you have to be.
Now, that doesn't mean I didn't check their work and just let them do whatever. They had to come to me and they had to show me their work, and I corrected it, and then they had to go back and fix it, whether it was a test. Yes, I did use tests. I know some people are against that, but I had 7 kids and I needed to know what they really, but I also let them do open book tests because I wanted them to learn. I wanted them to know that they could always use material to find out what they wanted. If it was a test, they could do that. Because that's real life.
It is, although the one thing I would say is because all of our tests were open book, I never learned how to test. I failed my permit test when I had the answers in my head. I had the answers and I second guessed. Yes. And I walked away going, I knew all those answers and I still failed. Interesting. And I had that experience a couple of times realizing that I never learned. So I think in future, if we use tests, I'll probably do part.
However, you tested high on your, when we went in, I don't know, every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, our state testing. I was okay with those. But those were so easy. Yeah. I shouldn't say that. State testing was so easy. And those were less of like having information retained tests is like doing your math equation. Right. They were learning more like daily school, whereas tests where it's like learn this information and then come back with it. I do really poorly on those because I never learned that skill. So I think I would do both of each, some of each. Yeah.
Yes, and I don't claim to have done it right.
No, but people want your experience
able to do, and in some ways, I'm wanting to encourage people to chill. That their home situation matters, and that's okay. That's okay. God can use you, and He can use you simply as well as and in small, simple ways by just being consistent, right, and faithful. Really.
So would you have any other tips for people managing toddlers, or would just maybe
I do think I do have a tip. And you probably
I have a hunch I know what this one might be.
Well, I would say give your child the gift of self-control, because it's a gift. It is a gift, and it's a gift to them. And I didn't realize that when they were little. And so, because I personally think that before you ever start to homeschool a child, that if you don't have that child having that gift and able to control themselves,
habits of obedience,
thank you, then I don't think I could have done it. Because when we sat down to do school, by that time, they weren't testing me. They weren't pushing the limits. They weren't doing things they shouldn't. I just had a peaceful day at school because they knew what was expected of them. I knew what was expected of them. They were treated better in the long run because I wasn't yelling at them. I wasn't frustrated. That was over. And I didn't realize at the time that by requiring them to be obedient, I was giving them the gift of self-control. I mean, and you look now and we all think there are all these things, everybody has something they can't get over. And it really falls under self-control. A lot of it. And a lot of it. And so if we can give them that gift at an early age, why wait? Because that's what I meant about we're training children in more than just school.
So you would say not just amusing toddlers, but actually training them to leave you alone, training them to keep their hands off certain things, training them to keep your homeschool peaceful, as well as not just having to entertain them while you're schooling.
And also the kids that are schooling. I mean, I wasn't constantly saying, no, go do that and stop this and whatever. So I had time for everybody. I say I had time for everybody. With 7 kids, I probably felt like I had no time for anybody, actually.
But you managed to do 7 kids, so that...
Yeah, I did manage somehow. By God's grace, I do say that. But, so it was something, but I didn't have to deal with that area. And honestly, if I did deal with that area, I think my life would have taken more time and more stress in the long run. So it's just something they learn, and it builds character.
Character is important. So we're getting down to the end. I think we only have 2 more. Okay. So one person asked specifically to talk about motivation and teaching patience with a child's work. So they have a kid who wants to work ahead, and so they try to guess, and he doesn't have patience to go through things slowly and work on comprehension. Just wants to kind of go quickly, and so she was asking for tips on that.
Well, I would say this was this a boy or a girl, or does it say?
I don't think it said it. It was a first
Okay.
grader, so kind of around this 6, 7, 8
Okay.
age range.
I think that different kids actually are ready for certain things at different times. I know my older child was ready for things that my second wasn't, and I pushed her to do it, and it wasn't. Had I done it again, I maybe would have waited a year. She wasn't quite ready, and I think that different children. I want to be careful here because we used one book. We used one book for English, one book for math. But I do think that there's different children that respond better to different curriculums, and that might have something to do with it. I also put you guys in on the later side of schooling on purpose because I wanted you to be more ready and test high in your grades than low, and especially with your brother. I put him in the late side since boys tend to develop later, and they just... they develop physically and running around and that kind of stuff. And I didn't want him to have to sit in schooling more than he had to. So I think that helped some. And I don't know if that answers your question. And some of it, I believe, has to do with character building. Training and just learning to do persevere. What you have to do, even though you don't want to, and requiring it. So it depends on the situation. I don't know that particular situation, but.
Okay. And then lastly, did you have any strategies for doing school during demanding seasons of life? Health or whatever. And what subjects did you prioritize and what did you let go? So if you have, because people have challenging seasons.
Yes. And I think back, I was pregnant and breastfeeding pretty much boom, 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 boom. I'm trying to think. I think just that when I couldn't, but I was consistent and determined to do school as we needed. I took off summers and spent a lot of time preparing to not have to do as much during the year. But the second, so I don't know if I'm answering that very good. I do have some thoughts on the second one as far as priorities because our priorities really were around God. Every morning I got out my guitar and we sat down and I put a proverb on the board and I asked them to tell me what it means and we'd talk about it and we would do a memory verse and I would read a story from the Bible and you guys would request songs, we'd sing, we'd pray for people. And in my mind, there were days when we had doctor appointments or whatever and we couldn't get to school, but I purposely to make sure we did quiet time because I wanted that to be a priority in their lives. And then when Dad got home, I would remind him every night, not bugging him, but just reminding him, quiet time, and he would go through the Word of God. And so we focused on the Word. We focused on ministry. Ministry was always a part of your guys' life.
Not necessarily a homeschool, but our life,
No, yes, but it was a priority. I would say as far as a subject we prioritized, it was that.
Got it.
But as far as school and prioritizing, maybe ask me that question again.
Well, rather than what would you do for difficult seasons of life? If you looking back now, if you were going through a season with significant health concerns and you couldn't give the time you needed to, what subjects would be the priority and what would you say let go of for the time? During those seasons. Do you have recommendations for that?
I went through a difficult period of physical illness when you were growing up. But it wasn't so much what I chose to let go of and what I didn't, is that you guys were able to learn on your own.
Again, so that
and you had self-control, and so you never made it difficult for me.
I remember, and by then we were doing most of our stuff on our own.
So that I was okay with that.
And I was 12 about that time?
Yes, but your older sisters did it while you were in school, and so it can be done at an early age as well. I don't say it's the best way to do it, but
you would say putting in that skill of being able to self-teach and self-discipline enabled some of those more challenging periods of time to be smoother, and you didn't have to let go so much because they could do more by themselves.
Right, and I didn't do, you pretty much followed a history book, you followed a math book, you followed an English book. So if you feel like you can't do the other, don't get down on yourself. I think it's great if you can.
Other being extras?
Don't compare yourself. Yes, or there's different kinds, not just the textbook. There's where you teach.
If you can't teach a lesson or a class versus just reading
Right,
through a history
you
text.
teach, you teach an era and you do your math around it. What's
Oh,
that
unit
called?
studies.
Unit
Yeah.
studies or whatever. I never could. My friends can.
You couldn't be
But-
elaborate. It just was,
Yeah.
we used a textbook and we worked through the
Yeah,
textbook.
and it was okay. It was okay. But I have to say, I think if I were to let things go, there would have probably been extracurricular things. However,
We didn't have a ton of those.
no, we really didn't. However, and you didn't take music lessons. However, 3 of you know how to play the piano.
Yeah, 2 of us taught ourselves.
Right, and someone plays guitar and someone plays, violin or whatever. So,
The only one who took consistent lessons was the violin player.
right.
All the other ones.
And
were
some of you are artistic. No, you may not be, and that may be important that they learn how to paint, and then you can do that. You guys just have natural abilities in art. Some of you.
I think even without
So-
lessons, you did try to enable those as much as you could within the budget and without lessons.
I
You did try to encourage us and praise us and facilitate that
Yes.
as you could, but
Right.
it wasn't part of our homeschooling.
Right. I think the hardest subject for me was writing because I didn't want writing to be rote, and I didn't want it to be textbook
You
style.
didn't want us to rote writing? Sorry,
Yeah.
just the past
So,
tense.
yeah. So that
Thinking I
was
will.
a very difficult for me, and I think the older kids got a little bit more of that than you guys did. But you're doing great now. You've figured out how to do what you need to do.
Self-teaching has been a skill.
Yes.
A blessing. I would say that is a big blessing. And as much as I enjoy, it's been something I've tried to figure out because I really enjoy doing the school with the kids and there's some things I really enjoy teaching them.
Right.
But I'm trying to figure out where's the point where I do start encouraging the self-learning because I also really want them to have that skill.
Right.
And if I do teach them, then I take away from that skill. So I'm trying to
Right.
figure out which subjects I want to encourage them to do on their own so they
Right.
gain that skill and which ones I really want to be
Yes.
part of
Yeah.
and make it a family thing.
Right.
And so I'm trying to think
And
through
then
that.
and I don't claim to have done it right, and there's people out there who do it maybe different than you, and I do it, but that's because God created you unique, and you have a way to do it. That's all yours. So you don't need to compare yourself to other people. Really, I think that's the main thing.
That's what you tell me? Well, thank you. I enjoyed that. I may drag you on here again if people want to hear more. So if you do have questions for her and you want me to drag her back on here, you should comment below. Let us know what those questions are. And I think, would you be happy to come back and answer more questions? Was this too painful for you?
No, this wasn't too bad. This wasn't too bad.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming along. And like I said, if you have questions, let us know if you have questions for her or for I, or questions you want to hear us answer together from different perspectives. Let us know. And we look forward to seeing you guys again soon.